I live with a sense of God that I can barely explain and tend not to trust anyone who can. About the sense of the divine, I pause, I hesitate, I might stammer, I might stutter, for there's so much that I do not understand, and am painfully aware that my experience is limited and my knowledge partial. I'm with St. Paul, who wrote that he saw as if through a glass or a mirror darkly. And also with the poet John O'Donohue, who wrote of the difference between what he called candlelight knowing and neon light knowing. Like O'Donohue, I'm a candlelight knower, and therefore ill at ease with the flashy certainties of a neon light spirituality. Yet the little that I know, like those rare flickerings in the dark, mean everything to me. As was the case for Nicholas of Cusa, who in the 15th century wrote of the Christian as, this is what he said, characterizes or distinguishes the Christian. The Christian is someone who, and I quote, knows he cannot comprehend the divine. He knows he cannot comprehend the divine. Well, this limited knowing on the Christian's part, his posture of incomprehension, is, according to Nicholas, an indication of his humility and openness before God. Such a, what we might call a not knowing, says Nicholas, is a necessary learned ignorance. Nicholas makes the case that the Christian's learned ignorance is wholly at odds with the pagan who's so sure about what he thinks he knows. And thus, our choice is required between these two incompatible positions. One that humbly knows a little, in contrast to one that thinks it knows a lot. And for myself, I would not for a moment trade away the little that I know for what the pagan thinks he knows. For I'm continually or repeatedly astonished to find that it's in that very inability to comprehend that a space is opened up. There's a space that opens for a greater knowledge to arise. It's almost automatic in my experience that when the mind calms, or to the degree that the mind calms, the spirit then rises. There's this relationship. The mind relaxes, the spirit rises up. And I'm in a different place. I'm in a better place. It's a place that sets me free, with a sense of new life arising. In what feels like a sacred space of barely knowing anything, something deeper is awakened. And I then participate in a level of knowing that transcends the intellect, and am able to affirm that in him I move or live, I live and move and have my being. And no longer feel then alone. For I'm no longer standing apart from reality, like thinking about it, but rather somehow I'm in reality. Instead of having thoughts about this or that, it's in a sense that I am now being thought. What a sense that is. It's strange to say this, but it's natural to experience. In moments of illumination, I feel somehow that I'm being expressed by a force greater than myself. Put in other words, I'm no longer in a sense outside of things, but inside. I'm no longer looking at God, but inside of God. And thus, I'm in another zone, a greater space or realm that I think Jesus meant by the kingdom of God. And I think it was this level of transcendental experience that St. Augustine had in mind when he said that God is nearer to me than I am to myself. God is nearer to me than I am to myself. What a statement. That is, Augustine's enlightened state involved a greater awareness of spirit than of his own self-awareness. Now, in such a realm, the believer is in a state of transport beyond both senses and the intellect. Located there, he senses that old things are passed away, and behold, all things become as new. And for anybody who's been there, which is to be lost in a state of wonder and love and praise, everything changes. As somebody exclaimed, life begins when we tap into this level of knowledge. Life begins when we tap into this level of knowledge. Till that time, we just exist. Life begins while in this deeper reality, and streams of living water begin to gurgle up and gush forth. Well, it's the alternative to being dried up and depressed. And I want to ask, who understands what I'm saying? Anyone. Who can I tell this to? Who cares? All around is noise. It's the noise of the world, clashing, banging, booming, people jostling for attention, non-stop chatter, and arguments, endless arguments about nothing. People living in what they call their real world, which does not feel real to me, but rather more like a prison. And it's killing them. Their reality is killing them. As someone said to me not long ago in an amazing statement of honesty, what I live with all the time is the unceasing chatter of my own mind. This is my constant companion. Always restless. She can no longer, she says, sit to read a book and would never try to meditate. Well, and thus remains in her noisy, restless world, accompanied by a constantly chattering monkey mind. This is her real world, of no interest to me at all. And I come away from this and other likewise empty encounters with a greater sense that just maybe I'm on to something good. What little I know is an incomparable treasure.